The podcast, I think, is Bastard Sword. Welcome back to Bastard Sword. I am Drew.
Hello, I'm Josh. Welcome to the podcast known as The Bastard Sword. Maybe without the.
Maybe without the, maybe with the. I don't know. It kind of depends. So I think this is episode 19, right? We're
Something
coming up
like
on
that.
big 20 milestone. Yeah,
We've been working hard.
we have. And we've got some kind of cool, kind of weirdly controversial things to talk about today, which we'll get to in a second.
Yeah.
You've probably guessed it based off of the episode name and the fact that we've been talking about covering this for the past few episodes, but we'll get there in a second. Josh, what have you been up to?
Oh, the way I've been begging you to play The Last of Us Part 2. No, I've been hanging out. I've been trying to figure out what to play next. And I've kind of hit a wall on gaming right now. But a couple things have brought me back. One in particular, I've been revisiting Splinter Cell Blacklist, which is really fun and like just a nice, easy to jump into like stealth game. You know, if you're familiar with the series, you know what I'm talking about. I've also been I started playing some Deus Ex Human Revolution again. Love that game. It's a little slow, and I was like, man, I want something like on that stealthy fucking people upside. So I checked out I picked up Intravenous 2, and I've been kind of stuck on it for the past couple days. And I think it's something we should cover down the line, but if you like Splinter Cell and like classic Metal Gear, it is like a perfect marriage of those two things. A little bit of Hotline Miami, but obviously not the same approach. It's all stealth infiltration stuff. So,
Yeah. How is that? It seems like that isn't. It doesn't seem like it's combat heavy or anything, but it looks like the combat actually seems like it would be pretty fun. I think with a good stealth game, the measure of that is always how it reacts, how fun it is when you fuck up the stealth. How does it like fare on that end so far?
I mean, I would say it's pretty tight. I would say it's maybe tighter than Hotline Miami. Just with like the hitboxes and the controls and how smooth and fluid everything is. You can definitely go into like murder mode, and you've got like a whole list of weapons that you can buy and customize. And like that is pretty detailed on a level I wasn't expecting for like a pixel game.
Yeah.
You can customize like every aspect of the gun. I always go for the perfectionist stealth run throughs. So, you know, I'm like quick saving and fucking shit up a lot and starting over.
The shit out of it.
So yeah, like one level that's like 15 minutes takes me at least an hour because I keep dying and making stupid decisions. But,
yeah,
you know, it's got like you can crawl through vents and choke people out, shoot people in the back. There's Molotovs, grenades, shotguns, machine guns. So, you know, it's like surprisingly in depth for how small it is.
Yeah, even just rewatching the trailer right now, there seems to be a lot of options on all the different weapons. Like it seems like it has some pretty deep customization on your loadout and everything, which it also looks like it's supremely my shit. So yeah, I'm down to cover
dude,
that.
I was like, oh, you know, I'll just kill an hour or two, check this game out, and I've been stuck on it. I'm not able to go back until I complete this. Hitting that like line of classic Splinter Cell and like taking out lights and hiding in the shadows, I love that shit. And it's even like, it's so good in this game because you can like turn off breakers and then like go in Batman style with the night vision and just knock everyone out. It's so cool.
Yeah, and there's actually not a whole lot of that kind of thing anymore. Like it seems like those type of stealth games sort of, they're very out of fashion. I don't know if they've completely disappeared, but they don't happen a whole lot.
Yeah, then that's what like I have this in my brain. I've been dreaming of like they remake Metal Gear 1 and 2, like the classic games, and make those like sort of that way, sort of I guess I want a Ground Zeroes is really what I want. MGS5 is good, but the Phantom Pain is no Ground Zeroes. You know what I mean? I want to infiltrate a fucking base and like shoot lights out and cause chaos. You know, it's fun.
Dude, you should play, and I know I've talked about this before as kind of a guilty pleasure, but seriously, you should try the newer Ghost Recon games. They actually have a lot to offer for that. Stealthily infiltrating a base at night and fucking things up with your night vision. They're like surprisingly good for that.
I need to, yeah, I've slept on like the Ghost Recon games for a long time. My dad used to play the shit out of them, like the classic first person shooter type ones, like the old school ones. He used to play those all the fucking time, and I always thought they were like way too hard because, you know, it was like realistic, and if you got sniped, you were dead. So I never played them when I was younger, and then I just slept on all the new ones.
Yeah, they could be pretty intense. I played a couple of the older ones. Like, I remember the original Ghost Recon. I'm going off on a tangent here, but fuck it.
Yeah.
Was like on the original Ghost Recon for the original Xbox. It was mainly a PC game, but it came out on the Xbox as well, and it had LAN play. And this was before Xbox Live was actually a thing. And I ended up playing that and the original Halo online through Xbox Connect, which just like spoofed a LAN across the internet.
Oh yeah,
the dorky as shit, but it was really fun.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. I miss the old Halo LAN parties. It would be everyone in a house drinking and like 4 computers going off, just running around the room and watching like everyone playing and switching out. That was always fun. Oh man, that got me on nostalgia.
Oh god, yeah. You'd have to fight over like I know. You'd have to fight over who's going to be on the like 13-inch black and white CRT in the bathroom.
Yeah, like the shitty controller that your brother gives you. Yeah, that's pretty much what it felt like. But it didn't matter. It was still great.
Oh god, yeah, I did so much of that.
But yeah, I need to check out a Ghost Recon game. I think wasn't the one you covered Breakpoint?
I think I did a video on Wildlands, which Wildlands and Breakpoint are real. I could go off on the differences between them. I think Breakpoint is it feels a little better to play. I think Wildlands is better as a game, just structurally and the map and everything. But yeah, we could do those at some point.
That one's more like MGS5, isn't it?
They're both real Metal Gear-y.
Okay, cool. Oh, I'm into that then. It's sort of like Splinter Cell, where I know they had some stinkers in the catalog. I know like it's not Manhunt, but it's the one where he shaves his head. Like everyone fucking hates that game.
Yeah.
So I'm always wary of those.
Conviction, I think it was.
Yeah, that one is silly as fuck.
It really is. But you want to talk about a game that is a little less silly as fuck, or did you have anything else you wanted to throw out?
Yeah, no, we could dive into it. Maybe it's too serious, but we can get there.
It can be silly in some ways.
You've finished The Last of Us Part 2. How do you feel? Are you depressed? Are you okay?
I feel bad. I'm
feel
depressed.
Bad, man.
Yeah, it's going to be coming up for a while in my therapy. But no, I liked it. I have actually a lot of thoughts on it, but overall, yeah, I like it. I guess my Cliff Note version is I think it is a much better video game than The Last of Us Part 1.
Yeah.
Well, the original Last of Us, whatever. They have weird naming conventions with the remakes and everything. But yeah, I think it's a lot better as a game. I think the story is more interesting from a wireframe. I think it's not as effective, not quite as good overall of a story as the first game. Like the pacing is kind of all over the place with the story, and some little issues with it kind of hold it back from being that like all-time classic story that The Last of Us 1 is. But overall, yeah, very good game. Like the combat, the scenarios, the level design of it is all just fucking fantastic. Like best in class. Kind of improves or just solves almost all of the problems I had with the first game as a game. That's the short version of it. Yeah, what do you think of it?
Oh, I hate it. No, I think it's great. I played it when it released, and yeah, it was an emotional trip for me. Mechanically, I think it's fucking amazing. Like, yeah, definitely an improvement on the first one in just about every way. And then, you add the whole like prone grass stealth mechanics and dogs and just the extra shit they layered into it. I think is great and improves it a lot. Graphically, I think it's like between The Last of Us Part 2 and Death Stranding, like those games will spoil you on like visuals. There aren't any other games that really like land in as close to those games. Like you could argue Red Dead 2, but I don't know. Something about the character models in Rockstar games always look a little stiff to me.
They do. They have a very Rockstar emoting type of animation style to them, which can look okay, but just the environmental detail and design and everything on The Last of Us 2 is incredible, and just the variety of places you go through. I mean, you're mostly in overrun or overgrown post-apocalyptic city, that kind of thing, but it's done so well. And it's a setting that plenty of other games do. Like it's one of the more common settings, but it is not done nearly as well as it is in The Last of Us 2 and pretty much any other game I've played. It's just, really a beautiful game, which is a weird adjective to use considering the subject matter, but it really is.
Yeah, like the way that everything is like deserted and overgrown. I feel like you get a lot of generic apocalypses in video games, and like The Last of Us kind of makes me be like, yeah, it would be all right. Like if everything was like that, not with all the murder and zombies and shit, that wouldn't be okay. But if just like half of America got reclaimed by nature, I'd be like, yeah, it's okay. I'm into it.
Yeah. Yeah, just the way all the plant life is just kind of like naturally taking back over in the city, and all this man-made infrastructure is just collapsing back into the earth and decaying. It looks so good. It looks natural in a way that it usually doesn't. And the amount of detail and attention and care put into all of these different places that are like real familiar. Like you go through these Chinese restaurants. I remember there's a firefight and basically a Home Depot. Yeah. Really cool. Just all these like real familiar urban and like, not industrial, but like commercial type of areas that are done just so realistically, but like just in a different context, and like I said, with nature reclaiming them and everything, it's all very, very good.
The fucking the like solo Ellie encounter that's like a mall that's underwater and flooded, and you can like dive in and swim behind them and do like sneaky shit like that. I love the variety that they implement in those little areas, and I love exploring and looting. I know we've talked about this before, but like I'm a whore for that kind of stuff. Did you find that to be tedious this time around? Did you get tired of looking through everything?
No, it worked for the game, and I guess this is a little side tangent, but you already brought up Red Dead, so I'm blaming you for this.
Yeah,
but I've complained, I think we've both complained a little about that game's approach to realism and immersion, with just making you sit through these just constant, like unskippable little animations for everything you do. This game has that to an extent, like Ellie and, well, I guess let's throw out spoiler policy here, I guess, if anyone's made it this far. Yeah, spoilers. We're going to spoil everything. I mean, it's been out for long enough. We're just going to talk about the game openly. So if you haven't played it, if you're sensitive to that kind of thing a few years later, then maybe hold off. But yeah,
if you haven't heard about Joel yet, then bad news.
Bad news, everyone.
Yeah, maybe if you're watching the show.
But yeah, Ellie and Abby, both, they have those little like discrete animations for bending over and picking up the loot and everything, but it's all really fast and fluid and not disruptive. And the crafting in the game is in-depth enough that it doesn't feel hollow. Like it feels like it adds something, but it's not super complicated. It doesn't have these giant like Assassin's Creed style skill trees and everything with all of that. It makes sense. Like I can get annoyed by crafting and looting systems if it doesn't seem like there's a reason for them to be there. But in this scenario, I mean, that it fits. Like, what else are you going to do? It's the fucking post-apocalypse. You're not going to have a whole lot of supplies. Go dig through some drawers, man. I mean, and it works. I didn't have a problem with it. I dig it, actually.
I've always liked the crafting. I almost wish it was more complicated, but I think that's like the Project Zomboid in my brain telling me that. But yeah, it's snappy, it's tight. It doesn't waste a lot of your time, and makes it so that you can craft in combat when you're like hiding and stuff like that. The only thing that bothered me coming back to it, and I think it's because we had the conversation about like slow animations, was the weapon modification. Like when you like click on that and it goes into that whole showing the gun thing, which is cool. Like it's very detailed. I wouldn't say that it's world accurate with what you end up building for your guns, but it looks neat. But I would just always like accidentally hit that button again and get stuck in the animation when I'm like ready to leave, and I'm like, fuck, no, stop. Like I can't.
I know.
Just close it.
Yeah, I was really into it for like the first half of the game, and then the second half I was like, all right, come on. Yes, I get it. I know you're kind of shuffling the gun around and putting some things on it. And if you haven't played it, so what happens, you find a weapon bench and it just plays a little animation of Ellie or Abby like pulling out the weapon, setting it on the bench, and then when you do an upgrade, it's like a 10-second or so animation of them kind of fiddling around with it and putting a new part on it, which 10 seconds isn't like a ton, but when you're like doing a lot of adding to it, it's just kind of like, I get it. Let me get back to the game.
Yeah, it's just a tad tedious, but it's not game breaking. I do love that it's like, attach a new slide to your gun, and she like polishes the slide and then it's like better. She's like, I've improved the gun now. It's like, no, okay, sure, whatever, let's go.
I did the thing. Let's do this. But yeah, I like that. There was you could upgrade your guns in the first game as well. It's been forever since I played that. Yeah.
I don't think it was like as detailed. I think it was just Joel would like put the gun on the workbench. I don't think it like got into the whole zoom detail look. I could be wrong. They probably changed it for the remake too. I haven't played part 1 yet, so I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't either. I also, I guess it's worth mentioning, I just played the original base PS4 version of The Last of Us Part 2. I didn't do the like PS5 kind of remake, kind of. So the naming conventions of that, I already mentioned this, but it was so fucking weird. I think that's part of the weird reception this game got, or at least added to the weird reputation that it has got. Can we go ahead and talk about that for a minute?
Like just the differences in the versions.
Well, kind of, but just overall the reception of this, because it's bizarre. Like The Last of Us is one of the most, there for a lot of reasons that we'll get into. I just kind of wanted to throw out into the world of the podcast that, The Last of Us 1, universally beloved, like held up as one of the high watermarks of gaming. I'm not 100% on board with that, as you can, listen to our couple episodes ago when I've complained about it a little, but it's generally deserved. Like everyone loves that game. Right. And then this came out, and there is still a very vocal, what I think is minority community on like Reddit and various corners of the internet dedicated entirely to
just gonna say the subreddit.
Yeah, dedicated entirely to hating this game. And it's kind of also became a little bit of a joke at a point about the fatigue of unnecessary remakes or remasters, because they put out The Last of Us Part 2. Was it subtitled remake or remaster?
Okay, so I'll break it down. There was the original, and then there is the PS4 remaster. Yeah, that was just The Last of Us remastered.
Yes.
And then we have The Last of Us Part 2, and then they made The Last of Us Part 1, which is the remake, and just kind of puts it in line graphically with the sequel. And now there's the remastered Part 2, which I've been playing that version, and obviously there's graphical improvements, but if you're not playing like a 4K, extremely high definition setup, then I don't think it really matters that much. It looks great, but I think they brought up some bugs when they remastered it. I think it's less stable than the PS4 version is, but that's probably just my interpretation or my playthrough. You know what I mean?
Oh, nice. Yeah, I had zero issues with that. But on the base PS4 version. But yeah, it was kind of weird because people were sort of mad about it because they weren't super transparent with what that actually was when it released. Like, people were thinking it was going to be an entire new full price product when actually it was just a like $10 upgrade from the PS4 version if you already had that, which is, pretty cool. I mean, that's fine for what I understand was a decent little overhaul to bring it up to current standards, I suppose.
And then they added some extra content, they added like instead of factions, because we were all waiting for like a factions multiplayer, they added like a sort of roguelike extra content, kind of like Mercenaries. You can play as different characters from the series and they all have different abilities and survival shit. So I haven't played that content, though. I kind of slept on it.
I've heard it's actually pretty good, and I'd be curious about it because the gameplay is so good. It's so tight and polished, and I'd be curious to see something that's just like a pure distillation of that isn't trying to make you feel bad about enjoying it.
Yeah, I don't know. We could get there. With the trailers of this game, they first showed Abby. The first thing they showed was that cutscene where they first introduced Lev and Yara when she's getting hanged. And like everyone thought she was going to be like Ellie's mom. Everyone like had a different idea of how this whole thing would go down. But, I would say like the direction that has gone has not really bothered me. And honestly, I was expecting Joel to get killed like as soon as the first game ended. I was like, oh, this dude is gonna die so quickly. So I don't know. How did you feel about the twist that it sort of takes with the prologue of this game and the reception of it?
So I guess, yeah, I'm just gonna kind of recap sort of what happens and what I think the game is about. So this ends up being just a revenge story. Like, it kind of reminds me back in the like mid 2010s, I got on this big kick of I dived down the rabbit hole of like South Korean revenge movies. So like the Mr. Vengeance, Lady Vengeance trilogy with Old Boy, I Saw the Devil, The Man with No Name, those kind of things that are all just really bleak. Just these stories of if you let the idea of revenge consume you, you'll just become a monster. Nothing good can come of it, blah, blah, blah. And this is really that as a game with a few wrinkles. So yeah, it opens up almost immediately. Like, what is it? Within the first half hour or so, Joel gets killed in like the most just brutal way imaginable.
Yeah, I'd say it's about like the first half hour, 45 minutes. There's some back and forth with Ellie and Abby, and then they just kind of throw it right at you. I knew it was going down that way. I didn't really like think that he was, regardless of it being like a revenge story or not. I was like, someone's gonna kill him. I've followed The Walking Dead in the comics for a while. Like, that shit does not hold back. So I didn't really think they would on this either.
No, I actually, and I had that spoiled for me. I think basically everyone did, which is fine because it's actually barely a spoiler because it's just the premise of the game.
Yeah, it's like the inciting factor of the entire game.
Yeah. So really what the big twist of the game is to me is you go through the first, not quite half, but like probably the first third of the game as Ellie and her girlfriend, significant other, partner, whatever, Dina, and you're basically just going down a list of all these people that were present in the room when Joel was killed in front of her and just like taking them down one by one and trying to get more information, trying to hunt down Abby. And then you finally end up with a confrontation between the two. And then big surprise, it does a like jump back in time and you play through everything from that first incident up to when they meet again as Abby. And the whole thing with the game is just humanizing the enemies and painting this big picture of actually, these people that you're killing are all complicated, realistic, likable human beings with their own like reasonable motivations and everything, and reasons for doing all of these things that you are perceiving as horrible. And it's just this like study of, you know, how all of these seemingly normal and likable, relatable people can be forced into these situations by either, you know, some inciting action and then their reaction to that, and whether or not they're going to let that consume them and become their purpose, and then what the result of that is on themselves and everyone around them, which I really like that as a direction. Like, I think that's a very interesting thing for the game to do. I don't think it's like a super new thing. I mean, even like we were talking about Shadow of the Colossus, how it makes you feel bad for killing the Colossi. Like, you don't feel like a good person in that game. But this is so much more explicit and so much more detailed with it.
I was going to say, every Dark Souls game, like, you're kind of a shithead for murdering all these like powerful beings. You know, Sif, we've all been there.
Yeah. The extent to which this goes to humanize and let you into the lives of these other people is pretty cool, even if I think some of the specifics about how it does it are a little clunky to me. But anyway, I'll quit interrupting you now. Go ahead.
No, I'll quit interrupting you. I was going to add to that. Yeah, like there's this whole like war aspect to the story that isn't really present in the first game. Like there's factions and like guerrilla forces and stuff like that are mentioned and like appear. Sometimes you fight them in the first game, but the like military, we're all soldiers sort of narrative that's like in the meaty like middle of the game. I think that's really cool and important. I don't hear a lot of people like talk about it. It kind of sort of walks that line of like a Metal Gear, maybe a Metal Gear 5. And it, yeah, just like the way that like Abby and all her friends are soldiers and they're actually in the middle of this war with the Seraphites, the Scars, who like live on an island like right outside of Seattle. And they're all like fighting for control. I think that's an interesting twist to the story overall. And I think you could like build so many different narratives inside of that. So I think it's a good setting for the story in general. Feeling bad for that sort of like realism and like taking down enemies and like killing all these people super brutally and like, you know, being too angry to die kind of. And it works that way for Ellie and Abby.
Yeah.
Oh, I mentioned this to you and I was replaying Metal Gear Solid 3. And there's that whole thing where the boss is like, there's no such thing as luck on the battlefield. Like, that's bullshit. And then this game takes that entire approach. Like, everyone gets like fucking lucky. And it's just like the timing of these overlapping characters that like they just barely miss each other and they just barely end up like doing something horrible as the next person walks into the room.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, like you could say some of that is clunky. I would totally agree with you. But I'd say the emotional beats still landed for me. Like I said, like that first playthrough, I was like, what the fuck, man? Like I was pretty upset. Also, I played that game like right after my grandpa died. And it's it's very like, oh no, dead dad story. So
yeah, like how do you cope with that? Yeah. So I think largely it did work for me. The only thing that really didn't is it felt a little bit. So of all people, it kind of brings to mind this quote from George Lucas for me, where forever ago, he made this quote that has bounced around the internet for a while. And I'm probably going to butcher it, but you'll get the point that it's easy to make someone feel bad in a movie. All you have to do is show them a cute dog and then kill it.
Yeah.
And this game like literally does that exact thing. But not only that, you kill the dog and then it spends like 15 minutes rubbing your nose in it, making you go play fetch with the dog with another character, saying, look at how good that boy is. And you just killed him, you fucking monster. Don't you feel really bad? How could you do this? He's just the goodest boy. And that kind of thing. Like, it's almost to a comical extent, like how likable all of the people in Abby's camp are. Like her dad just helping the helpless zebra, just being the most all shucks. Like with Joel and Ellie, they're obviously pretty complicated characters, and the first game really went out of its way to show you that Joel's not really a good guy. He's done a lot of bad shit. He's still a likable and empathetic character, and you can understand the reason he's making these questionable choices, but there's no result that he's done some bad shit. A lot of the people in Abby's camp were just like, they're so fucking pure and good, and you killed him, you fucking monster. It seemed a little on the nose at times.
Yeah.
And it wasn't enough to like take me out of it or anything, but just especially with the dog, I was like, fucking really, guys? I see what you're doing here. I appreciate the idea. It's just a little much.
Well, okay, so like as it goes for all fascists, and I'll apply this to the real world as well, maybe don't use dogs for your fucking heinous shit. Like,
this is true.
Don't employ animals who don't really have the will to be involved in this stuff. Now, I hate dogs in most games. Like when dogs are enemies and they're always annoying, they're fast, you know, they just come out of nowhere and bite you. I hate them. I them them every time in these games. Every time I play The Last of Us Part 2, I'm like, I'm sorry, Brutus, or whatever the fuck your name is. Like, I don't care. I don't feel bad when Ellie stabs the German Shepherd either. She just comes out of a hole and the dog like launches at her.
Like, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, it's survival. So I see a lot of this story in the way of like how Attack on Titan set it up in like its early seasons, where it was like kill or be killed, like stab the fuck out of them or don't, but like they're gonna kill you, so you have to.
Right.
And I like that approach for this world. I don't know. Now, see, now I'm conflicted. Should you feel bad? You're obviously not doing great things. You're trying to survive. You're trying to move forward. So with Ellie's story in this game, it is more she's throwing herself into the fray and trying to, you know, track down the people that were with Abby. So that comes to a head with Nora, obviously. And then she's like busted up about it, which I think is a little clunky, but.
Yeah, it's just the whole idea is that she should have just left well enough alone, and that yes, it is not an easy or even particularly realistic thing to expect her to not go after the people that did that to Joel, but like at any point either her or Abby could have just let it go and would have lived about the closest thing they possibly could to a good and comfortable, happy life in this world. But by neither of them being able to let it go, it just keeps escalating and resulting in all this fucking tragedies piled on top of tragedy for them and everyone around them. And so that's kind of where the feeling bad for it comes in, because like obviously, you know, Ellie should not be expected to not kill these people that are shooting at her and attempting to end her life, but she could have just hung out in Jackson and tried to make the best out of life there, and none of that would have happened.
Stay home with Dina, and and I think Dina's a great character, and she kind of says something to that effect too, like, yeah, I wish I could, like, I would stab the fuck out of the guy who murdered my mom, but like I can't, like, we don't know what happened to him, I think. Or maybe she does end up killing a guy trying to kill her mom. There's some narrative background there that's actually pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's sort of with these characters, it's all universal. Like they've all lived in this harsh post-apocalypse and had to fight to survive. And I think that all works for like the individual characters on both sides.
Yeah, and I think the characters are universally great. Like I talked about how it's almost a little too sweet with the characters on Abby's end, but they're all fucking great characters. Like the individual like dialogue lines and personalities and everything, they're all just absolutely best in class front to back.
Yeah, and I think that like Abby's guilt complex and like her weaknesses or vulnerabilities like fear heights and stuff like that does like solidify the character a little bit more. I totally get people not falling in love with her like on the first playthrough, especially with just like how jarring it is to start playing as her again.
I love that. I love that choice, but yeah.
Yeah, I like Abby as a character. Like I don't think that the way that she's implemented is bad. I don't think that it's disrespectful to Joel in the context of Ellie's story. You know, they don't spend a lot of time like pissing on Joel's grave, so to speak. I think Manny spits on him and that's about it. I don't find these things to be as controversial as maybe the vocal minority. And I've tried to replay. I've replayed this game like 4 times, and I've tried to like find that in myself. Like maybe I can find things that I don't like or don't enjoy or whatever. But I think I'm pretty set on I do enjoy the game and the story and just like how good the encounters are. The structure of the game and the combat and the climax of Ellie's like last level in the game are like so good. It just it feels so final. How did you feel about the sort of like post Seattle sections there?
So gameplay wise, I love them. Just wall to wall bangers. So many fun little sections, so many fun levels, give you all these opportunities to sneak around and do some Metal Gear Solid shit. Usually I get annoyed when enemies start just putting on body armor so you can't headshot people towards the end of games. That always just kind of makes it less fun for me. That was not the case here because you just had so many options to fuck them up otherwise. Like getting up behind them, grabbing them, hitting them with the explosive arrows was always so satisfying.
Yeah.
Narratively, so it kind of goes against a lot of what was going on in a way with how much the game did to humanize all the different factions leading up to this, to just come up on these like mustache twirling racist like slave runners,
the most evil bastards like in the universe.
Yeah, the most evil bastards imaginable.
Yeah.
But I mean, they were fun to slaughter, and I think it was an appropriate conclusion to her hunting down Abby and then kind of like rescuing her, but really fighting with being able to actually let go of everything, and then finally just in that pursuit losing one of the few things that was actually even bringing her any happiness, with the like losing her fingers and her ability to actually play guitar like that.
Yeah,
it weirdly like resonated with me a lot. I mean,
that shit's fucked up.
It really is. I mean, for anyone that doesn't know, Josh is a musician. I play a musician occasionally in my head, but like we both have a long-standing relationship with music and playing guitar and that kind of thing, and that's fucked up, man.
Yeah, if I lost like even one, losing 2, I'd be like, no. She still pulls it off a little bit there, but yeah, it's
a little bit, but it's kind of rough. But
and the song is a good like, and I imagine they'll probably use that in the show too.
I'm sure they will. Yeah,
like the framing device of her connection to Joel and all that. Yeah. It's good.
Yeah, and I'm a sucker for those kind of like folky Americana type somber songs and these sort of situations. They just really work for me.
I'm not a Pearl Jam fan, and it works for me.
Yeah. So what'd you think of that little coda on the story, I guess?
Like I love that sequence. Any part of this game that lets you like use zombies and like infected and clickers against your opposition is really great. And just how chaotic it like the AI goes off. Yeah, probably one of my favorite encounters, just how and how it feels like it's tacked on to the end because you're kind of like, okay, so this is the conclusion. It kind of feels left hanging a little bit, and then it's like, wait, there's more, and it does feel like it's hitting the end of its lifespan with like how long the game is, but it's a great conclusion. Every time Abby and Ellie like fought in the game, I was like also having they knew what they were doing there, but
yeah,
you're like, fuck no, please stop killing each other.
Yeah, both times I was just like, I don't want to do this. Like when I'm fighting Ellie as Abby, I'm like, fuck, come on, Abby, I don't want to do this. And when I'm fighting her as Ellie, I'm like, no, just chill.
Yeah, and like, you know, for video games to put me in like a conflicted, fucked up, like emotionally difficult scenario, like I love that stuff. Like I think that works super well. And you know, you're like playing the game and you're like, oh, you fuckers, dude. Like you guys are making me do this. But yeah, it didn't make me like mad at the game or hate the game for doing that.
No, I love that it was willing to do that. Like that's a big risk for a game as huge as this, like as anticipated as this, with the characters as beloved as this. Yeah, the balls to do that with it. Yeah, I have to respect that.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd say that's a great way to put it. Like this game does have fucking balls with all the things it throws in your face and how fucking brutal it is. And, you know, we've talked about that with the show. Like, I kind of hope they can implement that brutality, and because it sells how dangerous like the world is and how fucked up things are. So, yeah, I don't expect Ellie or Joel to like murder a whole room of mercenaries, but, you know, a little bit more ultra violence would be good.
Yeah, I kind of wonder how the Joel scene will play, since he was a little bit less of an evil bastard in the show. Like
he's almost too
he
soft.
Still did more or less. Yeah. Like it's just he's not nearly as hardened and not unlikable, but like believably bastardy in the show. So that they're gonna have an upward battle, like an uphill battle, getting people to sympathize with Abby.
Yeah,
not that they wouldn't have anyway, but I think even more so in the show.
Well, I think it would make for a great game, and I think like it would be interesting if they implemented something like, since they're kind of doing like flashbacks and shit in the show. Like in the first season, they introduced like Ellie's mom, who's like not a character in the games. It'd be cool if they shed some light on like what Tommy and Joel did, like because it's hinted at several times that they were like pretty fucking ruthless, and supposedly did what they had to survive. But I would like, I think that would kind of balance it out if you were like, okay, like, no, Joel is kind of like a fucked up bastard, which they give you like notes of that in the show, but he's a lot less violent than he is in the first game.
Yeah, he's Pedro Pascal. He's a big teddy bear. Like,
yeah, exactly. It's hard to see him as like a ruthless killing machine. And that was like kind of my complaint, even when he went kill mode in the season finale. Like in the game, when he's like, oh, you'll just come after her, like he sounds so fucking pissed. Like Troy Baker's just good at what he does, I think. Like any role that Troy gets in a video game is like awesome. Troy is just so angry and like festering, and just like you don't know if he's gonna snap at any moment. And I found that less believable with Pedro, but you know, that's show video game. I get that there's going to be differences here.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I love the show. I actually might, I know I've mentioned this before, I might like it more than the first game, but I kind of am retroactively worried about it after having played The Last of Us Part 2. Like I didn't think that was necessarily as big a deal until I played this and, you know, saw how they built on that bastardry to make this go down smoother. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and he's gonna be all like sad dad through like the first, I'm gonna give it like 2 or 3 episodes. They're gonna do like a mid to quarter season like oh fuck moment, and I have a feeling it'll blow up, even if like a lot of the show community has an idea of what's going to happen. I think depending on how shocking they make it, it's it could kind of be like the Glenn moment when it happened in Walking Dead. Because like I knew Glenn was gonna die for like a long fucking time. The comics were way ahead of the show.
Yeah.
So, like I remember my mom being like shocked about that and was like, "Oh yeah, you saw the eyeball, huh?"
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think they'll handle it well, but I think they'll probably like really let it bake in for a few episodes. And I think they'll probably put a lot of like attention to the flashbacks because those like solidify more of like Joel and Ellie's relationship beyond the road story. Because like you just get like character development from the first game. And I would say in terms of foreshadowing, like it's heavily foreshadowed in the first game. Like Joel says shit like all the time, like our luck is going to run out. We're going to fucking die. So I think like narratively, like it was all set up and it's obviously tacked on to the story of the first game. I don't think this series ever really needed a sequel, or I find it really hard to imagine a third game at this point. I want it, I'll play it, but I don't know like narratively what it needs. And I'm sure they're kind of like scratching their heads like what to do next about it. Because let's talk about the cure, right? Because that is also a big part of the debate. Is so like Ellie could have been the cure, but she would have had to get like dissected basically. And then when they introduce Abby's dad, there's this whole discussion of like, if it were Abby, she would do it.
Right.
So like the community has been fighting about like the cure for a long time. And I don't think that the cure actually like fucking matters. What matters is that these characters believe that it would have worked.
That's exactly what I was going to say on
Thank
it.
You.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I feel like I'm crazy because it's not the point. It's the fact that all of these people, especially Joel, believed that it would have worked and still made the decision regardless. Like it doesn't matter whether it would have actually worked or not.
I think, and Joel says that to her a lot. I think that he was sort of like trying to make himself believe that it was like that they would have just killed her and it would have been worthless because that's how his daughter's death goes down basically. So the fact that he continuously tells her that, and then she says like, you kind of took the choice away from me. So she believed that it would have been a worthy sacrifice either way. Narratively, there's no debate about whether it would have worked or not. And that the community has been so caught up on this facet of it that I just, like I need to make that clear to the world. Everyone needs to understand that.
Yeah, it feels like it feels like that's missing the point entirely. So
yeah. Well, like I've seen people be like, well, so the surgeon was just like a vet tech and like he was going to like cut out her fucking spinal column to create a vaccine. Like none of this like adds up. And it's like, yeah, I don't like the way that they're like, hey, we got Ellie prepped for surgery. We're going to kill her. Like, I don't think that makes a whole lot of sense. I think that there could have been like justifiable consent in the show and in the game. It feels really like, okay, this needs to happen for these beats to function properly. And in the game, it's worse because they get like knocked out like 3 times in a row and end up there. Like, I hate that they almost get washed away in the bus and then they wake up and then Joel gets knocked out again. It's like, what the fuck? How many head injuries has this guy had and almost drowned on top of that?
Got fucking like an entire NFL career worth of CTE after the last day.
Yeah, he actually wouldn't have killed everyone if he didn't have gray matter for brains. No, I mean, I think the things that they've added to the show and, like all of that work pretty well. But I'm curious to see if everyone fights about that again. I really hope that we don't, or they can set up.
Oh, they will.
Yeah. Or they at least give us enough to be like, yeah, like this guy could have done it. Because that's another framing device that I don't entirely get when they're like, he's the only guy who could have like performed this surgery. And it's like, well, there's not another like brain surgeon or neurosurgeon that's like survived anywhere. I mean, I know we're getting to like pretty slim pickings with everyone, but come on, like that's just the one guy that's in the Fireflies.
Yeah, even just over in this little corner of the world, you have these big pockets of civilization popping up, and these people that, you know, it's not like the education resources just disappeared. I mean, they could, yeah. I get, again, this is probably a little getting into the weeds and missing the point a little bit, because it doesn't matter if he's the only person that can do it. In that moment, they believe that he's the only person that can do it. So, yeah, whatever.
But that is actually, the belief is what brings out the extremism in like all the characters and factions anyways. It's why the Seraphites are the way they are and all that.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny how little Ellie's immunity matters in part 2. Like it's not even really an issue. She gets bit a couple times, a couple people comment on that, and that's really the extent of it. I mean, she's there as this almost mythical figure to the Fireflies, and they're like, oh my God, it's her.
Yeah.
Like they speak of her in those hushed tones, but the actual immunity, it's there, but it doesn't really matter or play into the story. That's just not really what it's interested in, which is neither good nor bad. It's just kind of interesting.
It matters the most when she makes that guy who is apparently played by Logic. I don't know if that's real information. I saw something about that. Like the other Rattler guy that she like feeds to the clicker.
Yeah.
Apparently that's Logic, the rapper. I'm just like, what the fuck? Because he doesn't look like Logic, but apparently he did the voice acting or something.
That's funny. So you feed Anthony Fantano to a clicker.
Yeah, this is for saying it, man. You brought me back around to a point with what they added in the show. So in the show, they added the fact that Ellie's mom, and like this is presented in like the penultimate episode, or maybe it's the finale, I can't remember. But Ellie's mom gets bitten while she's pregnant, and she delivers before the infection gets her, but the baby is fine.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Marlene is fucking there, and Marlene sees this happen, and I think helps her deliver the baby too. So it's very odd that, like, knowing the circumstances of that she's like, okay, well, let's kill this kid and get a cure. I mean, obviously she's not that diabolical, but like, it's very weird that isn't brought up in conversation or isn't a point to be made to anyone, because like, if that's the only way to recreate an immunity, because, you know, like, what kind of like birth infection, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not a fucking biologist. Maybe I'm getting into areas I shouldn't confront here, but like, you know, how would that formulate anything? Like,
I actually don't really like that they explain it like that. It feels like one of those things that didn't need an explanation.
I think that's problematic. Yeah, it kind of works better if it's mysterious than like, hey, it was like because your mom was pregnant at the time. Because it seems like that'd be the only way to recreate an immune person.
Well, yeah, and then you have the ability to recreate the immune person. Like, it is a known thing how she became like this. So then eventually, why aren't they just figuring out a way to do that? They just have a whole ward of pregnant people and zombies that it's like, okay, all right, she's about to go. She's dilated to 9 centimeters. Get the clicker in here.
Yeah, bite her. Yeah, the most fucked up experiments that would actually like protect most of the next generation from infected. I mean, Ellie can still get like her head smashed in by him though, so it doesn't really save or solve anything. No. And maybe that's the point. That's the moral of the story.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, but overall, like, I do really enjoy this game, mainly for the mechanics. Like, and I've seen some people, and because every now and then I like to check in on the angry Reddit and see what they're still angry about. And mainly they're all angry about the way Bella Ramsey looks and Joel dying and how did Abby get so much protein? Where is she getting all the creatine to get so swole?
God.
And I think that's another thing that you just need to not like fucking worry about. Like, you know, so many good characters are just presented as they are. They don't need like a whole rundown on their fitness, but it's solid for how it goes down and the way it's all put together. I do wish there was like a hatchet order for the days. Like if they did a remix where you could play like each day as each character.
Oh yeah, that could be cool. Yeah.
Even though there's like a flow, like I think that would work really well. But yeah, I don't know. I've got lots of thoughts about this game, but not really in like hating on the the way it's presented or the characters. Oh yeah, a lot of people were mad about Lev, of course. And like the gay stuff that was in the first game. Sorry, hate to break it to you. Like it's pretty much on the nose with Ellie.
And it's such like a non-issue. Like I don't know. I if you want to be the most generous you possibly can to angry online people's positions about that kind of thing, they're always yelling about DEI and that kind of bullshit, saying that they don't mind representation, it just shouldn't be forced. And this is like the least forced version of representation that could possibly be. Like, yes, Ellie is gay, it is a part of her character, like she has that relationship with Dina, but it's not like an overt thing. It's a thing. It's just presented as the most normal thing in the world because it fucking is.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like they're just shoehorning this shit in. Like you said, it's been there. It's just, I don't know. It's part of the character. It's not a fucking weird thing. I don't understand why it's a big deal. But
they don't dwell on it very much with Lev either. And Abby's just like, okay, well, you're a guy. Moving on. Like it's obviously it's the point of conflict for Lev and their background and all that, but you know, to the characters' relations, it doesn't matter and it's not a focus of the story. Oh, but yeah, like I've seen people actually say that mechanically the game is really good. Like despite all of these things, if you ignore the story and what you like or don't like about it, it's probably one of the best stealth action games out there, like ever.
Oh God, it really is. And you mentioned very briefly being able to like pit the different factions of enemies against each other.
Yeah.
So like the Scars or Seraphims or whatever, and the Wolves and the Infected, and like that first encounter between the Wolves and the Infected and the subway is just fucking revelatory. Like I
just throw
was
a
like,
brick.
hey, I wonder. Well, first thing I did, I was like, I wonder what will happen if I grab this one wolf and then just walk him into an Infected, and it is so fucking satisfying.
I actually haven't tried that. I always just draw them in with sound.
It's so good. Yeah, you grab them and just let an Infected run into you, and you basically just like shove them in the Infected's mouth. It's so fun.
That's brutal. Yeah. I always just like, as soon as that encounter starts, I'm like, here's a brick, sort it out, y'all. Like I just go. That one and the encounter in like the end of Abby's story where the Wolves and the Scars are like battling in that field. God, I love that. That whole sequence is so cool. And that's the MGS4 moment for me.
Yeah, just crawling in the grass between all these different soldiers that are taking each other out, trying to figure ways to like pit the different ones against each other, start picking some of them off without getting everyone to notice you. It's so good. And there was a moment before, like just a little bit before that sequence with Abby, that was one of my favorite ones too, where, and this isn't like pitting factions against each other, but you're in kind of a blown out warehouse type deal, you know, as you do, but it's also flooded with just like knee high water. So you're, you know, walking around, creeping between these different things, and you can actually like crouch and swim underwater from like point to point and like sneak up on people that way and everything. Yeah, it's so creative and just well done and so fucking fun. Yeah. all the scenarios in this are just like world class.
That's the MGS3 moment when you're like in the little river and swimming under the guys in the floating like pods or whatever they're called, the like jet things that they're like patrolling.
Yeah,
I love that. So like the question is too, like, what is Naughty Dog gonna do next? Because, you know, they spent all this time talking about Factions 2. And then apparently the Destiny devs were like, hey, you guys are going to have to like run this live service game like all the fucking time for years. And they noped out of that one.
Yeah.
And like, are you an Uncharted fan? Have you played the Uncharted games?
I have played. I really like what I've played of them. I've not played enough of them. Uncharted 2, I loved.
Yes.
I played some of the first game, but didn't play through it completely. And that's where it ended. I just missed 3 and 4. I need to go back and play them because I've heard 4 is very good. But yeah, I don't know. I almost wouldn't mind them going back and making a new Uncharted, or at least something in that vein that's a little less bleak than this, just as sort of a palate cleanser for their sake.
Right. Yeah, I mean, they can't be like just making the saddest, darkest, fucked up games forever. Yeah, I think Uncharted 2 is the first one I played, and there's a lot of debate about whether 2 or 3 is the best. 4 is pretty good too. I would like to see them do a Cassandra game, which is, I think that would be like Nathan Drake's mom. And it's hinted at in this game, like when you're in the movie theater, there's like a poster for like the spy lady Cassandra. And like, I thought that was like a hint that they were going to do like that kind of game next, which I think could be fun if it was like period based and stuff.
Yeah, so you saying that makes me really want like a spy type game from them. Do like a James Bond style thing.
Yes.
That would be great.
But as like a woman in the 1930s or some shit like that. I don't know if it's his mom or his grandma or how that timeline would pan out, but it'd be the closest thing of getting like the MGS3 prequel where you play as the boss in World War II. That's another game I just dream of actually existing.
Yeah, give me that shit. I'd be down for another Last of Us eventually. I don't think they need to jump right into that. And it's just like, I don't know, like you said, I don't really know where the story goes from here. One had a perfect ending, but it made sense that there would be fallout from that decision. So regardless of what direction they would take it, you know, they left themselves plenty of room to do something. This, I don't know. It's not like there's a big hook. It doesn't end on like a big revelation or a big moment. It just kind of ends with this creeping realization of, well, I just fucked up everything and now I'm really sad. And like, what do you do from that?
My life is ruined, but I will live. Yeah, I will keep on living, I guess. And like Ellie is sort of in the position that Joel was after, you know, before the 20-year gap of just like, well, yeah, I'm fucked. Which I think it could be cool to have a game where we have like an older, haggard Ellie, but again, what do? You just put her in the same Joel dynamic where she has to take care of a kid, or I'm not sure what they could really do from there. And story wise, it's like, I really hope that the immunity thing isn't like the crux of it. Cause I feel like the community expects some sort of conclusion with her being immune. And I don't think it's going to matter like that.
Yeah. It doesn't need that. Like, The Last of Us is not really about the greater cosmology of the world.
Right.
That stuff is just all kind of secondary to the personal, you know, actions and lives of these characters. And they've kind of burnt all of that down with 2. So I don't know what they do from there, but yeah, we'll see.
Well, I was going to say, like, comparing it to like 28 days or 28 weeks later, like those movies are so about like war is hell, basically, but it's more like, it's not as personal. Maybe the sequel is a little bit with the dad thing, but The first one is very much like a war movie. And I would say it's kind of like this game is like a war movie, but it's also so centered on like the emotional ins and outs of these characters. So yeah, it needs to follow that. It needs to be about the characters' journeys, I guess, as opposed to we cured the world and we're healing, you know. I don't think that's gonna happen.
Yeah, they could just do a complete like narrative walking sim where they manage to cure the world without the help of Ellie, and they've rebuilt a civilized society, and she's struggling to fit into it without
she's all fucked
going
up.
off the fucking rails.
The VA has abandoned her and she's just out on the streets.
Yep.
Or hear me out. What if there was like a guy that traveled across the United States connecting and building roads?
Ooh.
And he had a baby.
Go on.
There's a baby. And that baby is key to him connecting America again. Oh God, are they tied
What is
together?
this man's relationship to the president of the United States?
Mom, girlfriend, ghost.
Mom, girlfriend, ghost.
That's what it is. Yeah.
I'm here for it. Yeah.
That's the one thing. This is a whole tangent on Death Stranding, but like the mom ghost friend thing is so like, why did you do that? Speaking of Old Boy, why would you do this narratively to me? That's not a twist in the American remake. Have you watched that one?
I haven't.
The
Kind
Josh
of on
Brolin
principle.
one?
No, I've heard it's not completely horrible, but I just why? Like I feel zero desire to ever watch that.
Yeah, no. Sorry to just like jump from Death Stranding to Old Boy again, but it all matters. It's all connected. Trust me.
Right. We are reconnecting all of these properties.
Yes.
In our
Sony,
journey across
baby.
the podcast zone of America. I'm not sure. So, yeah. Any final wrap up thoughts on The Last of Us 2? Did we cover what we needed to cover on it? I feel like I could go on about just all the little fun gameplay details and everything, but
Yeah, I mean it is an amazingly detailed game. It's very tight, it's very fluid. It is cutscene heavy, but not to the point that it's annoying. I would say the prologue is the slowest part of the game, and then it just kind of is fucking running full speed, especially by like Ellie's day 2. So yeah, I mean, not really. I don't think I have like a ton of huge thoughts on how I feel about all of it, but you should play it if you haven't. Oh, I was gonna say it's I think it kind of works like in a disconnected way from the first game too. If you just didn't really know about the first game, you could probably play through it and experience it and like have more than enough to go on, because it doesn't dwell on the first game a lot. Does that make sense?
yeah, I mean, it gives you enough context of what happened there that you probably don't necessarily need to have that information yourself. Although I don't know who the person would be who would jump into this having not played the first one.
Right. I would just say it's sort of like the Uncharted series is kind of like that. Like, even if you don't really know the running story and character relationships, like, you have enough there in the context of one game that it probably doesn't matter that much. So, yeah, either way.
You're actually probably a lot less likely to join or create some weirdo Reddit community hating everything about the game if you haven't played the first one. So,
well, I think people just had way too long to dwell on it because, you know, again, like with the end of that game, I didn't know what they were going to do with the sequel. I had no expectations for where that story should have gone. And, you know, I'm very happy with the sequel. So maybe if you don't spend like 7 years expecting it to be a Joel and Ellie road story part 2, then you'll probably enjoy it. So you could just run through both games.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
Maybe so.
Maybe.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I held off on playing it until you finally nudged me to do so.
Yeah.
Not so subtly. And I'm glad I did, though, because it was always on my radar. I just hadn't really got around to it.
The one thing we didn't talk about was the boss battle. There's one very extremely survival horror Resident Evil type boss battle. And I wanted to know what you thought of that after so much Resident Evil in your life lately.
Oh, it almost dragged on a little bit too much. It was cool. I dug the design of the weird, like, giant zombie blob thing at the bottom of the hospital. I liked how relentless it was. It gave you enough room, and you have like enough tools at your disposal that it didn't feel like you were, handicapped against it or anything, but it still felt pretty big and imposing. It also didn't have that thing that I'm kind of getting annoyed by in the Resident Evil games I'm playing, where it just feels like you're not actually accomplishing anything as you're shooting it. Like you have to wait for the glowy weak points or anything. It didn't really have that kind of thing. It was good. I don't think it was necessarily like a standout moment of the game. It doesn't feel like a game that really needed a boss battle, but I didn't feel like it detracted from it.
Okay. Yeah. I've just heard a lot of people go on and on about that one. So I needed to know where you stood on the Rat King boss or whatever it's called. But
wait, go on and on how? Like, I'm curious because I haven't seen that discussion.
Oh, just that. Yeah. Like it's kind of, some people think it's like a really cool moment in the game. Some people think it's like out of place and kind of weird and somewhat filler. It doesn't like narratively, like in the universe, we haven't seen anything like that. So it's just like, this run around the hallway and shoot the boss, the bullet sponge boss until it falls over. I think it's scary enough though. I think it works. All of the horror in this game works really well, I'd say.
Yeah, I agree. And that whole sequence leading up to it was really tense. And like, you're going to be coming up on something. I don't know. Probably I'll try not to go off on a big tangent again right at the end here. But yeah, the imagery of everything like being organic and just these weird like fleshy mushroom spore things growing over everything and just taking over these whole sections of rooms is so fucked up and creepy looking. And as it just slowly like builds and builds and it's leading up to something horrible. Yeah, that was all really effective for me. That and like the new ones that kind of like are glued to the wall but will jump out at you as you get near. Yeah, all those were great.
Those guys and the stalkers, the stalker enemies always fuck me up. Like even when I know they're coming and I'm ready for them and I know their tactics, like one of them always tricks me and like surprises me. But
yep, every time.
Yeah, but I mean, the enemy variety in this game is pretty great, and it's nice that they're throwing new things at you that late into a game that could kind of just keep repeating the same beats effectively. But yeah, it is sort of a very strange survival horror boss to throw in there, but still works. It is what it is.
Yep. Yeah, in general, the boss fight type sections, there was that and a couple little like fist fights that gameplay wise I wasn't crazy about them, but I thought they worked well enough for what they were. And we don't need to spend more time on it. We've already talked about how narratively effective the couple fist fights with Ebby and Allie. Yeah, with Ebby and Allie were. So, yeah, that's probably good. Okay. Good game. Last of Us 2. I enjoy it.
All right. Well, yeah, check it out. If you're mad about it, play it. Be more mad.
Yes.
No. But you should, if you're gonna, if you have like strong opinions about this game and you haven't played it, you should play it and experience it for yourself. That's where I draw the line on that.
Reinforce those opinions. Get more mad about it.
Yeah, be pissed for like 25 hours and then go out into society.
Yeah. So anyway, yep. We appreciate you guys listening. Thank you for the support, ratings, reviews, all those things. I have been Drew, and this has been Bastard Sword.
Josh, thank you for listening. Bye.
Thanks. See ya.